When I was sick, my wife and daughter abandoned me. Many years passed, and they came back, not for me, but for my house. But let's start at the beginning to completely comprehend it. Sometimes in life everything you've known seems to come tumbling down, like a home that was once sturdy turning to dust. The doctor used the words advanced Hodgkin's lymphoma, which for me was the moment that would rock my world. I felt as though the ground had given way under me, and I was left floating in a mist of shock and hopelessness. I'd always thought that my healthy diet, regular exercise, and yearly physicals would protect me from this kind of bad luck. But cancer, as it turns out, doesn't discriminate. The physician emphasized that the precise reason of my condition was unknown in a tone that was both practiced and depressing. There was no clear reason why my body had deceived me like way. He told me I had very little chance of survival, but that tiny bit of hope may be extended with rigorous chemotherapy. All I had to hold on to was that fleeting possibility. I was terrified of the time I would have to tell my wife Lisa and our teenage daughter Emma about the diagnosis. I collected them in the living room, and although the weight of my news would break them nonetheless, I sat them down as gently as I could. Their expressions were as I had anticipated. They were devastated and had big eyes, both from the loss of a life that would never be the same. They sobbed. I made an effort to reassure them and to appear brave, but a deep worry was eating away at me. In addition to the disease, I was concerned about what it would do to our family. I was aware of the negative effects that a protracted sickness may have on a relationship. The doctor had suggested that many couples don't survive such storms and described how emotionally and physically taxing treatment would be. I kept feeling like something was going to break, either my body or me or us, even though I had told Lisa we would deal with whatever came up. After the tears subsided that evening, I confided in Lisa my deepest anxieties. Quietly, she listened and then reassured me in a firm but gentle voice that she would support me. She repeated the vows we had made so many years before, in sickness and in health. We had spent 15 years together, enduring all the ups and downs of life, and she assured me that this one would not be any different. We were comfortable, at least financially. I had substantial savings, decent insurance, and a trust fund that my late grandfather had left me. Our home was all paid for, and in case something untoward happened to me, I had money saved up for Emma's college expenses. On paper, it seemed like we were prepared for this horror. However, paper cannot take into consideration the emotional devastation, relational strain, or issues that money cannot resolve. The battle begins. I began treatment 1 week following the diagnosis. If I thought I knew what fatigue was, I was incorrect. Chemotherapy left me feeling empty and lifeless, but it did more than just sap my vitality. I felt so exhausted after my first session that even the concept of standing, walking, or even eating seemed impossible. Returning home that day, it was as if every muscle in my body had given out. Wondering how I would survive another day, let alone another round of chemotherapy, I fell onto the couch. Emma and Lisa intervened. They were attentive at first, making sure I ate what little I could stomach, cleaning the house, taking me to my appointments, and setting up my prescription. When I felt strong enough to move from room to room, I made an effort to help in little ways, but even those little gestures were draining. I detested carrying a load. Fighting illness was one thing, but feeling as though I was dragging my family down with me was quite another. For months, this routine continued. While the treatments were meant to cure the cancer, they also felt like they were killing me. Every chemotherapy session felt like a new blow to my body. I was still taken care of by Lisa and Emma, but I started to notice small differences. They no longer helped me with the same care. Instead, they were more impersonal and robotic. They grew reticent, their sighs louder, their words clipped when I begged for assistance. Emma, who had been so happy to get me a drink of water or to accompany me outdoors so I could get some fresh air, began making up reasons not to come near me. On certain days, I could feel the annoyance seething beneath their courteous exteriors. They didn't think I saw, but I did, based on the glances they exchanged and the slight motions of frustration when they thought I wasn't looking. I was starting to become more than just a burden for them. I was starting to breed animosity. The cracks start to show. I had an appointment for treatment early that morning. Feeling the repercussions of yet another restless night, I contacted Lisa, who hadn't left our room yet, as I was running late. Waiting, I expected her typical haste to assist me in getting ready. Rather, her voice floated down the steps, leaden with fatigue. "Why don't you just hail a cab?" she inquired. Her comments hit me like a physical blow. I was accustomed to her coldness and her subtle changes in attitude, but this was plain indifference. After a moment of being numb, I reached for my phone to summon a cab. It dawned on me how serious her refusal was while I waited. Even if she was only upstairs, I still felt abandoned. The idea of relying on a stranger's kindness rather than my own wife hit me with an unspeakable melancholy. The driver, an elderly woman, was kind and compassionate. She took me to the hospital in her car and even waited for me to get out of her appointment before taking me home. My sense of loneliness at home was heightened by her kindness. Tired both mentally and physically, I went to face Lisa when I got back. I had to be aware of what was going on. Had I really gotten so bad that she could not bear to be of any use to me? Were I too much of a burden? Lisa was just as tired as her first suggestion when she responded. She reluctantly acknowledged that she and Emma were both feeling overburdened. It was more of an admission than a nasty statement, as if she had been keeping it inside for weeks or even months. Emma, who remained silent throughout our talk, admitted that she didn't think I would require as much attention as I did. Her remarks hurt. To be honest, I didn't think I would require this much assistance either, but cancer had left me essentially unrecognizable. A temporary fix. Although I was aware of the burden my disease had imposed on my family, hearing it directly from them hurt me in a different way, so I put out a suggestion. I proposed that we employ a nurse who could assist me with the daily duties that had grown too difficult for me. A few days a week. Lisa seemed relieved at the thought. I could tell. She didn't argue for once. Emma didn't say much, but her quiet communicated something of her own. When I asked the hospital for advice the next day, they sent a nurse by the name of Anna. Anna was a blessing from heaven. She was kind but strict, making sure I never skipped a chemotherapy session, reminding me to take my medication on schedule, and even planning my meals to keep me as healthy as possible. For a bit, things got better. I believed that we might be heading back towards some form of normalcy since Lisa and Emma no longer had to bear the burden of taking care of me. However, Lisa continued to seem aloof despite Anna's assistance. She was watching Anna walk about the house, and I could see it in her eyes, a kind of jealousy. Lisa didn't take long to begin making casual, insignificant remarks. They started out being mild comments about how Anna seemed to be around more than was required, or that she was overly concerned in taking care of me. The remarks became sharper with time. It was evident to me that she was becoming more uneasy in Anna's company. Lisa wasn't interested in hearing my explanation that Anna was there since the load had been too heavy for her. Lisa objected when I told her that Anna had been picked especially because of her background caring for cancer patients. She advised that we look for a male nurse instead. No amount of explanation on my side could convince her otherwise. She felt supplanted. Shattered bonds. In an attempt to calm the rising tension, I proposed another compromise. Lisa had the option to take over Anna's duties, which included making sure I ate healthily, scheduling my chemotherapy visits, and managing my prescriptions. We could release Anna if she was willing to take on those responsibilities. However, I felt in my heart that Lisa was no longer capable of it. She could no longer bear the burden, and I had grown too big for her to handle. Lisa reluctantly accepted the compromise, but it was clear from her voice that she was resentful. She inquired about finding a male nurse once more, and I reiterated that Anna was your best bet. Her expertise and professionalism were really helpful to me. And she had treated Lisa and Emma with nothing but deference, but Lisa wasn't swayed. She became increasingly frustrated as the days went by. She told me I should start taking care of myself more one evening, out of anger. The burden of my condition was too much for her to bear. I made an effort to convey that there were times when I could not get up, much less take care of myself. My body was being torn apart by chemotherapy, leaving me defenseless and feeble. She was unwilling to hear it, though. Lisa slammed doors as she stormed upstairs. I remained on the lower level, experiencing the well-known pain of being left behind in my heart. That's when I realized our marriage was falling apart, little by little. Abandonment. My mother-in-law gave me an unexpected call a few days after Lisa's outburst. She was upset that I had brought another woman into her daughter's home. I explained, as calmly as I could, that Anna was a professional nurse and that I needed aid beyond what Lisa could provide. However, my mother-in-law was unconcerned with the specifics. Her concerns were limited to appearances. I was exhausted by the chat, but I made an effort to ignore the bad things. My priorities were more important, like simply existing. After the call, things resumed a peculiar form of normalcy for a few days. At least Lisa and Emma were still in the house, even though they were still putting distance between them. Then everything changed one day. After a particularly taxing chemotherapy treatment, I arrived home to discover a moving truck parked outside my residence. It was as shocking to see as it was to the stomach. My pulse was pounding as I staggered inside and saw Lisa and Emma packing up their stuff. They were heading out, just like that. All they said to me was that they would be staying with Lisa's mother. There was no conversation, no disagreement, just a cool, collected choice to leave. Chemofatigue prevented me from responding as I would have liked. I was too weak to shout and plead with them to stay. Rather, I watched them leave, my heart exploding once more. I had anticipated this moment from the very beginning, that my disease would push them away, that I would become too much for them to manage, and now that terror was actually here. Emma was the last to go, and I turned to stare at her, waiting for a glimpse of insight. Was this really what she wanted? I questioned her. Living with me had been too difficult, she remarked, her expression laced with something I couldn't quite figure out. After then, she turned and left through the door. A novel form of assistance. Their leaving left me with a house that felt eerily vacant. I felt completely alone for the first time since receiving my diagnosis because of the overwhelming silence. Even though Anna kept stopping by, my wife and daughter's absence left a gap in our lives. That's when Steve, my brother, came into play. He had always been the dependable one, the pillar in our family. He was enraged to learn what had transpired. He found it unbelievable that Lisa had left me when I most needed her. Even though Steve was a few hours away and had his own family to support, he offered his assistance without hesitation. He came to live with me for a week, assisting me with everything from grocery shopping to taking me to appointments, taking time off from work. I felt relief for the first time in months, as his presence was a balm for my broken spirit. But Steve couldn't remain forever, and as his week with me drew to a conclusion, I began to worry about what would happen next. Steve then made a solution suggestion. Kate, the sister of his wife, was going through a difficult period. She was in need of housing while going through a difficult divorce. She had been living in a modest flat too far from campus at a nearby institution where she was studying radiology. Steve proposed that Kate temporarily move in with me. Both of us would benefit from the arrangement. She would have a place to stay close to her institution, and I would have someone in the house in case of emergency. After I gave my oak, Kate moved in a few days later. She was pleasant and kind, and we quickly established a comfortable rhythm. She made sure I had everything I needed and assisted with domestic duties, but she never went above and above. In a way, her presence was exactly what I needed, someone who cared, but without the emotional baggage that had come with Lisa and Emma. A hint of hope. Life with Kate in the house was quiet, but serene. Of course, I missed Lisa and Emma even more, but the hurt of their absence had gradually lessened. I attempted to put more of my attention on my health after accepting that they were no longer in my life. I followed a rigorous diet regimen with Anna's assistance, and I gradually started to regain my power. After Lisa had been gone for approximately a month and a half, I finally got the news I had been hoping for. I was cancer-free. As soon as the doctor told me, I was overcome with relief. I had made it through. It was impossible for me to overcome cancer. I rang the hospital bell, a representation of my triumph, and for the first time in what seemed like a long time, I gave myself permission to be optimistic about the future. My pillar of support the entire time, Anna, asked me what I wanted to do next. I told her straight out that I needed to file for divorce as soon as possible. New beginnings. My life has transformed in ways I never could have predicted 6 months after I was told I was cancer-free. Once I filed for an uncontested divorce, I started the process of starting over in my life. I've healed really well physically, my body is stronger, my hair has grown back, and I've even begun to put on some of the weight I lost throughout chemotherapy. I've maintained a healthy diet, but I do occasionally treat myself since life is too short to not savor the little things in life. It's been a little trickier emotionally. I've been totally shut off from Lisa and Emma's lives. They haven't checked in or given me a call, and I've accepted that I probably won't hear from them again. It ached at first, wondering how the people I love the most in the world could have let me go so casually. Yet as time has gone on, I've come to the conclusion that I'm better off without them. I've even decided to put the house up for sale. I want to start over since I have too many bad memories here. I'm going to give Kate the house. Since she has saved my life, it seems right to give it to her. She may do whatever she wants with it. Sell it, rent it out, whatever. All I want to do is go on. I've already moved into a new location in a peaceful rural neighborhood. It's humble and little, yet just right for me. I've already made a few new friends, including Mary, a sweet widow who lives across the street, and the neighbors are pleasant. We have a strong link because we have both experienced loss and illness in the past few years, having lost her husband to lung cancer. Shade of the past. Just when I believed I had put my past behind, it found a way to catch up with me. Mary approached my porch one afternoon and stated something odd. Earlier that day, 2 women had been circling my house. They hadn't done anything unlawful, but they had knocked on the door a few times and went about the property before getting back into their car and leaving. As I asked her to describe them, my heart fell. Her description made it quite clear to me who Lisa and Emma were. I was baffled as to how they had located me. Only a few individuals knew my new address, and I had made a conscious effort to cut links with the past. For what reason were they here? After all this time, what did they want? Mary, ever the helpful neighbor, urged me not to worry. She pledged to take care of things and make sure they didn't cause any trouble if they returned. I thanked her, but I was unable to get rid of the dread that had crept into my chest. Unwanted visitors. Lisa and Emma returned shortly after, this time during the day while I was at work. When I heard the knock on the door, I looked curiously at the security footage. As expected, they were there on my porch with all the authority that comes with it. Mary and I had established a plan, so I stuck inside and listened through the door. As she had promised, Mary arrived and greeted them. Lisa asked straight away if she knew of a man named Tom who had lived in this house before. As I heard her words, my heart thumped in my chest. Rather than calling me husband, or even ex-husband, she stated that I had passed away in the hospital. My mouth fell open. Mary, thank God, maintained her composure and cooperated. She informed them that although a man by the name of Tom had resided here, he was still very much alive. She added that I had confided in her about my divorce and my plans to leave everything to charity, as I had no family left but my brother. Lisa's irritation became apparent as the talk became tense. Did they have a death certificate? She inquired. Any official documentation proving who owns the home? When they acknowledged that they didn't, Mary invited them to return after they had resolved any bureaucratic issues. The idea wasn't well received by Lisa, but in the end, they departed without incident. The last face-to-face. I was mistaken to believe that would be the last of it. When Lisa reappeared, this time accompanied by Emma, things quickly got out of hand. A loud crash caught my attention while I was working in my home office. I hurried to the living room and saw my front window shattered. Bits of glass littered the floor. Outside, Lisa and Emma stood with bats in hand, shouting at the top of their lungs. I couldn't believe what I was witnessing. My neighbors had already contacted the police, and within minutes, the cops arrived and detained both of them. Lisa turned to me as they were being led away, asking why I hadn't gotten in touch with her after I recovered, tears running down her cheeks. I informed her that I didn't want to have any kind of contact with her again because she had deserted me when I needed her the most. Our union was ended. When Emma and her mother left that door, Emma had also made her decision. I had no desire to interact with either of them. They were both taken away in handcuffs after I filed charges. I should have felt guilty, sorry, something at all, when I saw them sobbing while being loaded into the back of the squad car. However, I had no emotion. Progressing. After the event, I looked into it and discovered that Lisa and Emma had nowhere to stay because Lisa's mother had died a few months prior. When they returned to our old house from their stay in a motel, Kate was already residing there. It appears that they believed me dead and had come to find out, or maybe to lay claim to what they believed was theirs in the first place. Nevertheless, accusations of assault, attempted break-in, and vandalism are being brought against them both. Since Emma is a minor, she will be performing community service, but Lisa will be going to jail. In order to prevent them from approaching me ever again, I have also applied for a restraining order. For my part, I get a feeling of completion. I've let go of the past and am prepared to welcome whatever lies ahead. I've been reminded that there is still good in the world by the generosity of total strangers like Mary and the encouragement of family members like Steve and Kate. I've discovered that, occasionally, the individuals we believe we can trust the most may let us down, but that there are always others willing to step in and assist with the healing process. I am appreciative of my second shot at life and intend to spend the remainder of my days in a state of hope, thankfulness, and tranquility.